I've been a canine handler for nearly a decade, and I've never seen my dog scared of anything. Gunfire, abandoned houses, violent suspects, none of it ever shook him. But one night, during what should have been a routine house search, my dog stopped, stared down a dark hallway, and started backing away, like something was standing there. Something only he could see. Before this starts, make sure you hit subscribe because stories like this don't get easier, they only get darker. I've trusted this dog with my life for nearly a decade, and that night was the only time he ever tried to pull me away from something instead of toward it. Not hesitation, not uncertainty, fear, real fear, the kind that makes a trained canine break instinct. And the worst part, I saw exactly what he was afraid of, but I still don't understand what it was. I've been a canine handler for almost 9 years. My partner, Rex, is a 4-year-old German Shepherd trained in tracking and narcotics detection. He's rock solid. Loud environments, abandoned buildings, dense woods at night, none of it ever got to him. He's the kind of dog that moves forward no matter what. That's why this call stuck with me. We were dispatched to assist patrol after a foot pursuit. A suspect had run through multiple backyards before vanishing near a quiet residential home. When we arrived, officers had already cleared the first floor, but something didn't sit right with them. The side gate to the backyard was open, and the back door of the house was unlocked. Neighbors reported hearing a struggle just minutes before police arrived. The homeowners were out of town. That meant if the suspect had gone inside, he was still in there, hiding, waiting. I clipped Rex onto a short leash and gave him the search command. He didn't hesitate. He pulled forward immediately. We cleared the first floor quickly. Living room, kitchen, laundry, nothing. No movement, no signs of forced entry inside. It was too clean, too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears. Then we moved upstairs. The hallway was narrow, with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom at the end. No windows were open, no airflow, just still, heavy air. Rex moved ahead of me, focused, sniffing low, then high, methodically working the space like he always did. The first bedroom was empty, the second one too. Then he pulled toward the bathroom at the end of the hall. I stepped in behind him. Everything looked normal. Sink, mirror, towels neatly placed. No signs of anyone hiding. Rex circled once, then froze. His ears shot forward, his body locked up. A low growl started deep in his chest. I felt it before I even reacted. Then he snapped his head toward the hallway and started barking. I stepped back out of the bathroom, my pulse picking up. "What is it?" I whispered, more to myself than him. Rex wasn't looking at me. He was locked onto something down the hallway. I followed his gaze, and that's when I saw it. At the far end, near the last bedroom door, there was a figure, tall, completely still, dark, like it was absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. I couldn't make out a face, just a shape standing there. "Police, identify yourself!" I called out. No response, not even a flinch. Rex's barking turned frantic, aggressive, but underneath it, there was something else. Panic. He started pulling backward, away from the figure. I've never seen that before, not once. I asked again, louder this time. "Who is that?" Still nothing. Then, slowly, the figure turned and walked into the bedroom at the end of the hall. I knew every officer on scene. None of them were upstairs. I radioed in that I had a possible suspect and requested immediate backup. Then I tried to move forward. Rex resisted hard. He planted his feet, pulling back against the leash like he was trying to drag me out of there. I had to force him to move. Step by step, we approached that bedroom. He kept looking up at me like he didn't understand why I was doing this, like he knew something I didn't. When we reached the doorway, Rex refused to go any further. He stopped cold in the hallway. I stepped in alone, weapon raised, scanning left to right. The room was empty, completely empty. A bed against the wall, a dresser, no one inside. No place to hide. The window was shut. Closet empty. No attic access, no crawl space. Nothing. Backup arrived seconds later, and we searched everything. Walls, floors, even checked for hidden panels. There was nowhere anyone could have gone. Rex never entered that room, not even when the other officers tried to coax him. He stayed in the hallway, staring inside, low growl rumbling in his chest. When we finally left the house, he kept looking back toward that room. like something was still there. Outside, he calmed down, but not completely. That look he gave me, it wasn't relief, it was confusion, maybe even warning. I've replayed that night over and over. I've chased armed suspects, walked into worse places than that house, but Rex, he's never reacted like that before or since. And if there's one thing I trust more than my own instincts, it's that dog. Which means whatever we saw in that hallway was real.
The call came in at exactly 2:03 a.m., and even before I reached the house, something about it felt wrong. Dispatch said it was a kidnapping, but the voice on the line didn't match the words. It sounded like a little girl trying to say something an adult would say. And right before the line went dead, there was a sound in the background, like someone whispering, "Don't." I was about 10 minutes out when I picked up the call. A storm had just rolled through, knocking out power across most of the town. Street lights were dead, houses were blacked out. It felt like driving into a void. Another officer, Chris, radioed in saying he was closer and would meet me there. Dispatch added one more detail before we arrived. The caller might have been disguising their voice, or worse, forced to sound that way. When I pulled up, Chris was already parked outside. The house stood at the end of the block, barely visible through the rain. Even in the dark, you could tell it was neglected. Overgrown grass, windows blocked by thick bushes. Parts of the roof looked like they were collapsing. No lights, no movement, just silence, except for the rain hitting everything around us. Chris looked at me and said, "This place doesn't feel right." I didn't respond, I just nodded. We approached the front door together, flashlights up. I knocked first, no answer. Then I rang the bell. A few seconds later, footsteps, slow, dragging. They stopped right behind the door. Neither of us spoke, we just waited. Then I glanced at the peephole, and right as I did, something shifted behind it, like someone had been watching us the whole time and pulled away the second we noticed. "Police, open the door," I said firmly. The lock clicked. The door creaked open just enough for a man to peek out. Early 30s, overweight, glasses fogged slightly from the humidity. But his eyes, they were wrong. Not scared, not confused, calculating. I told him about the 911 call. He laughed nervously and said it must have been a pocket dial. I asked him about the voice. He avoided eye contact for a split second, then said he didn't know what I was talking about. I asked if anyone else was inside. He said no. I told him we needed to come in. He refused. So I stepped back, called dispatch, and got a telephonic warrant approved within minutes. When I showed it to him, his hands started shaking. That's when I knew whatever was inside that house, he didn't want us to see it, not at all. The moment I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Rot, filth. The living room was a disaster. Trash everywhere, dishes piled up, insects crawling freely. But then something didn't match. Near the hallway, I saw a bright pink dollhouse, clean, almost new. I asked him again, "You said you live alone, right?" He nodded. I didn't believe him, not for a second. We moved down the hallway. One room had piles of children's toys and a life-size doll sitting in a chair dressed like a person, clothes folded neatly on the bed beside it. It didn't belong in that house. Nothing about it made sense. The man started talking behind us, trying to distract, saying there was nothing else to see, but his voice was getting tighter, more desperate. At the end of the hall was a basement door. As I reached for it, something rattled from below. Not loud, but enough. I drew my weapon. The man behind us started apologizing over and over, like he already knew what we were about to find. I opened the door and shined my light down the stairs. Darkness, total darkness, but I could hear movement. Slow, weak, like someone shifting their weight. When I got to the bottom and opened the final door, everything changed. Inside was a man, thin, pale,
barely able to stand. He didn't move when I pointed my weapon. He just stared at me like he didn't believe I was real. Later, we found out he had been missing for 2 years, held captive in that basement. And the call, he made it using the suspect's phone when he had the chance. But here's the part that still messes with me. When he spoke to us at the hospital, his voice still sounded like a child. Not fake, not forced, permanent. And that means for 2 years, someone made him forget what his real voice even sounded like. The call came in as a simple 911 hang-up, but the neighbor's last words before disconnecting stuck with me. I heard a woman screaming. By the time I pulled up to the house, the street was dead silent, like nothing had ever happened. But the front door, it was already open, just enough to make you wonder who walked out and who didn't. It was around 2:40 a.m., light rain falling, the kind that makes everything shine under streetlights. I parked a few houses down and approached on foot. No movement, no lights inside, just that door slightly cracked. I radioed dispatch, advised I was on scene, and requested backup, but the nearest unit was at least 10 minutes out. That meant whatever was inside, I was walking into it alone. I stepped onto the porch and listened. Nothing, not a single sound. I knocked, announced myself, police department. No response. With a report of screams and an open door, I had no choice. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The living room looked normal, too normal. Furniture in place, nothing knocked over. It didn't match the call. I cleared the first floor slowly. Kitchen was clean, dishes in the sink, a glass of water still sitting on the table like someone had just been there minutes ago. I called out again. Silence. But the longer I stood there, the more it felt like I wasn't alone, like someone was waiting for me to notice them. At the end of the hallway, stairs led up to the second floor. As I stepped on the first stair, I heard it, a faint shuffle, soft, quick, coming from upstairs. I froze, listening. It came again, not loud, but real. I drew my weapon and started up, one step at a time, every sense locked in. Upstairs, 3 doors, 2 closed, 1 slightly open at the end. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I announced myself again. No answer. I pushed the open door wider. Inside was a bedroom. The bed was unmade, sheets hanging off the side. A lamp was knocked over. That was the first sign something had gone wrong here. I checked the room, closet, under the bed, nothing. Window was locked, no exit. I moved to the next room, a child's bedroom. Toys scattered, empty. Then I reached the last door, the bathroom. That's when I saw it, a dark stain on the carpet just outside. I crouched down, touched it with my glove. Blood, fresh. I pushed the bathroom door open. More blood on the tile, leading toward the tub. I pulled the curtain back fast, empty, but there was blood near the drain, enough to mean someone had been hurt, badly. I radioed for backup again, urgency in my voice now. I was alone in a house with fresh blood and no victim. Then I heard it, a sound from downstairs, a floorboard creak, slow, deliberate. I moved back toward the stairs, aiming my light down into the darkness. Something had changed, I was sure of it. When I reached the bottom, I noticed a door near the kitchen, slightly open now. I knew it had been closed before. I approached it carefully and pulled it open. Basement stairs. The basement was pitch black. When I reached the bottom, my light hit a metal chair in the center of the room, zip ties hanging from the armrests, and a massive pool of blood beneath it. Then movement. A figure bolted from the corner, sprinting toward a small window. Glass shattered as they forced their way out. I chased, but by the time I got outside, they were gone. The house belonged to a man who was never found. The blood matched him,
but not enough to confirm he died there. And the woman the neighbor heard screaming, we never found her either. To this day, I still don't know if I walked in during the end of something or just missed the beginning. I've worked hundreds of searches, chased armed suspects, walked into places most people wouldn't even look at in daylight. But that night, that hallway, that was different because my dog didn't hesitate. He didn't lose control. He tried to warn me. And if there's one thing you need to understand about canines, they don't get scared for no reason. So whatever was standing at the end of that hallway, whatever walked into that room, it was real. And the worst part, we never found it. If you think you know what it was, or if you've ever experienced something like this, make sure you hit subscribe, because this is just one of many calls that never made sense. If this gave you chills, hit like and share it with someone who shouldn't be watching this alone.